This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everybody. Jordan Girth here from the National Weather Service Office of Observations. Thank you so much for joining us for the Satellite Book Club Seminar Series. This is session number 124. Today's presentation, Leveraging Remote Mesoanalysis in National Weather Service Central Region during the 10 and 11 December 2021 tornado event. Our presenter is Kyle Perez, a meteorologist from the Springfield, Missouri Weather Forecast Office. Our facilitator is Randy Bowers, meteorologist from the Indianapolis, Indiana Weather Forecast Office. Just a few reminders before we get started. This session is being recorded. There will be an opportunity for Q&A after the presentation. We're particularly interested in questions and comments from our field offices and regional headquarters, so please feel free to post your questions in the chat and we will field them in the order they are asked. We will also, if you'd like to ask your question aloud, just please indicate so in the chat and we will throw over to you. Also, if you have not signed in with your full name, perhaps you're using an office account or you're just using your first name, if you could make sure that you note your full name when asking a question in the chat, that'll allow us to follow up if necessary. I'd also encourage everybody to check your spam folders if you're looking for information from the TowerS team. We've heard that some information about the Satellite Book Club is sometimes ending up in spam, and if you use no email in general, it's a good idea to check that out because sometimes people that don't contact you as frequently end up in the spam folder. We're always looking for future presenters, so if you'd like to be part of the Satellite Book Club, please get in touch with the TowerS team, and in particular, if you are, maybe you have a case that you're going to present at AMS or you previously presented at NWA, maybe it's only partially related to satellite, but it's a great application of how satellite can help with the many weather service mission service areas. We'd love to have you be part of our Satellite Book Club. So don't feel afraid to reach out and schedule a slot with us in 2023. And also, if you're looking for training materials, either training materials that may be unavailable or you may be unaware of, Brian Mott at the Office of Chief Learning Officer can help with anything on that. I'd like to thank the TowerS team, particularly Kashad Bowman and Lee Byerly, as well as the Office of the Chief Learning Officer, the GOES-R JPSS program, our presenter, facilitator, and all of you for being with us today, making the Satellite Book Club a success each and every week. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kyle formally. Kyle Perez has lived in Missouri his entire life, received his bachelor's and master's in meteorology from St. Louis University. He then started his career with the National Weather Service in Springfield, Missouri in 2018. Kyle, we're glad to have you at the Satellite Book Club today. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I look forward to presenting here today on leveraging remote mesoanalysis in NWS Central Region during the tornado event last December 10th and 11th of 2021. I'd also like to thank my co-authors real quick on this presentation. We had actually previously presented this as well at the NWA conference this year. So I'd like to thank Jason Shawman, the Science and Operation Officer here at the Springfield office. Also like to thank Keith Sherburne and Christopher Knowles, meteorologist at Rapid City, South Dakota, and Paducah, Kentucky, respectively. So digging into it, we're going to kind of give you a brief overview here of what exactly the Central Region Remote Mesoanalysis Support Program is. It's also known as RMA for short. You know, in NWS, we love our acronyms. So there's your acronym for today. It's the RMA program. So the RMA program is a mutual aid concept. It's about providing that mesoanalysis ahead of and during severe weather events. This ranges from everything, for example, from convective initiation, how the storms are going to evolve over time, what kind of environmental changes are we seeing, and how the event will evolve going forward over the next, say, 3 to 6 hours. That's all in our mesoanalysis in the mutual aid concept. So we focus on those key decision points in areas of concern or uncertainty, and we're leveraging the expertise. You know, this has been a great program that continues to grow. It's a grassroots program from Central Region that is still in its infancy, only 2 years into this program. This image here on the right kind of shows you what it would look like, how a remote mesoanalysis program works. There's a facilitator that is in contact with the respective WFOs that request that mesoanalysis support. And I want to make sure that this is not necessarily Meso A for these WFOs. There's still the potential to have a mesoanalysis focal point at the office during an event, but more so it's providing that extra information, that extra backup of information and streamlining that information to those offices. So the end goal of the program is enhancing situational awareness and decision support for supported offices, creating that one NWS and working towards the same end goal. So here's a few more things about the RMA program. Establishing the foundation, we utilize Google Chat, which allows image sharing, great images shared. I'll have some examples coming up of how that was leveraged during our event last year in December of 2021. But there's also rules of the room. So this is not going to necessarily be a forum where we second guess warning decisions that are ongoing. It is strictly for the use of mesoanalysis and focusing on those different concepts. So where is the program right now? We have over 50 volunteers and facilitators. Myself and Randy are actually both RMA facilitators. So if you have more questions after this presentation, we'd be happy to help you out with those. And we continue to leverage the expertise from folks across our service. That includes the Storm Prediction Center, WTD, OPG. These are just some of the examples. And this is not all exclusive list here by any means. This also is, the door is open for leveraging other expertise, especially when we're talking about satellite expertise going forward. So the RMA program, this is just a little short snippet here, has supported over 36 events in its infancy here, with 20 plus here in 2022 alone. On average, these events are supported for 8 hours or more. And they're typically going to be for at least an SPC slight risk day. And that includes even weekends and holiday events that we are able to support with typically over 100 plus chats in these particular events in the chat rooms. So I pulled together just a bunch of different images of what does the RMA support program look like. So yeah, there's lots of information here, right? There's everything from SBC mesoanalysis page looking at different parameters, there's satellite imagery, there's soundings, there's surface analysis. So, they say a picture can be worth 1,000 words, right? But in this particular case, it can be pretty open-ended if you just share these images. So that's why we leverage the expertise of the facilitator and others throughout our RMA program to add that context to these different images and sources that are being shared. And that allows the WFOs and the participants to, gain that knowledge of what's going on in the mesoanalysis part of the atmosphere right now, and how they can leverage that going forward in their operations. So let's dig into the December 10th, 11th event. That should say 2021. That's my mistake on there. So I'm not forecasting anything here by any means. So for that event, there was a moderate risk across portions of the mid-Mississippi Valley, which included portions of southeast Missouri into southern Illinois, western Kentucky, western Tennessee, and northeast Arkansas. So I'm not going to dig into too many details behind the actual setup of this event, because as many of you know, this was a higher end event that was fairly well forecasted, and everything was in place. Things were in place for this to be a potentially dangerous event, which included a hatched area of a 15% probability for tornadoes. So this was going to potentially be a tornado outbreak that was on our hands here across portions of central and southern region. So for the event, the initiation, this is how a typical initiation would look in the Google chat room. Somebody from central region would reach out and start the thread, a new thread for the day, and they would let you know who the particular facilitator was going to be for that day. And that's how we actually schedule all of our different events, with regards to making sure that facilitator is available, and we let the chat room know who the particular facilitator is going to be for that event. So for this event, the different NWS WFO participation included the Springfield office here, the St. Louis, Missouri office, Paducah, Kentucky, and Louisville, Kentucky offices. RMA facilitators, Keith Sherburne was our main facilitator through much of the event, but we also had some other input from other facilitators in the latter part of the event from Alex and Brian. So through this particular event, I really wanted to talk about, being that we're on a satellite book club here, I want to talk about how we leverage satellite tools in the RMA program. So I took some snapshots of some different chats that were shared throughout the entire event, going through this. And this is one of the first ones that Keith shared in the early afternoon hours. This particular one was leveraging the day cloud phase RGB, and he mentioned how he's starting to see some potentially rooted to the boundary layer, and just really setting the stage for the event going forward. And you can see that some follow-up chats with that here at our office. We're able to not only use what we're seeing on satellite, but see how that relates to what we're also seeing in the data that's coming in from ACARS as well. So just a great example here of how satellite tools can be leveraged and was leveraged in this particular event. Going forward into the later part, the mid part of the afternoon here, here's another great snapshot shared here, how showing just a 1 hour time lapse that was shared by Keith as well, the facilitator, showing the Viz IR sandwich band, suggesting that there's mid-level mesoscale ascent over the last hour across portions of northeast Oklahoma. So this was going to play a factor in the event going forward, and the potential for storms becoming rooted to the surface and growing upscale fairly quickly. Another great example, as I mentioned, we like to, in the Mesoanalysis chat room, explore those different areas of either uncertainty or concern going forward. So here's a particular snapshot here where Keith, our facilitator, circled a couple different areas of interest on just visible satellite imagery, and he kind of depicted what was actually going on in each one of those circled areas. So you can see there, the area circled in red of particular interest, where our potential tornado outbreak would occur later that evening, was the area circled in red, where he talks about the potential of cross-hatching of billow clouds, which can be indicative of strong low-level shear and storm relative helicity. So these are the kind of things that we want to share in the Mesoanalysis chat room, and things that we also look forward to in future RMA support program going forward, leveraging that expertise and seeing what we see on satellite and how that relates to what's going on in operations. Here's another great example by late in the afternoon, starting to see some horizontal convective rolls across portions of northwest Missouri, and even starting to see some hints of some stable billow clouds not too far south of there. So just great chats being shared. And then as we're starting to get into the more core part of our event here, into the latter part of the evening, early evening into the mid-evening, we continue to see how this evolves. Snapshot there looking at water vapor imagery, and then further down the line taking a look at IR imagery and how that relates to the ongoing convection and what potential we have going forward with the event evolution. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about how this all wraps together then with our event here across Central Region with this tornado outbreak. So the part I'm going to really break down and discuss a little more is how we provided service backup for the NWS Paducah office during this particular event. So this is a radar imagery. The yellow outline layer is our Springfield County warning area, And as you can see, our event's starting to come to an end here. We just have one severe thunderstorm warning across our eastern portion of our area. And at this particular point, our event's starting to wind down. Anybody that has worked operations kind of knows that feeling of how operations begin to wind down, and you're starting to look at staffing and seeing who you could send home at this particular time. But as you can see there in the far right-hand imagery, that warning in pink over Mayfield, that is ongoing tornado that is on the ground in Mayfield at that particular time. And this is when we went into service backup as NWS Paducah took a power hit at their office. So this is a tweet that was shared from the Paducah office showing that they took a power hit and that NWS Springfield will be taking over operations, and there would be no further impacts to tornado warnings that are currently in effect. So as the primary radar operator for that particular day, the pressure was on, and Paducah put it on for us. But this is what it's all about in National Weather Service and the mutual aid concept, and how we're able to quickly spin up as a service backup office. So looking at some radar imagery from that particular night, this is what it looked like when we took over for NWS Paducah for service backup, with an ongoing tornado emergency and considerable tornado warning downstream from there. Quick look at what that looked like on velocity as well. Going forward through this event, the NWS Springfield office would issue 4 different tornado emergencies downstream from this over the course of the next hour. And you know, it really goes back to how we were able to leverage the use of the RMA program. You know, this was not necessarily the sole intention of the RMA program for this particular event, but as the office going into service backup for this particular event, it allowed us to quickly come up to speed on the environment. You know, additional note that I want to mention in the use of satellite for this particular event and how it was leveraged. When Paducah went down completely hard there, we lost any incoming AWIPS data for radar data. So what we were using was a mixture of satellite tools and GR analysis on our computers. So that was what was being leveraged in making these warning decisions, in conjunction with the use of RMA to further give us confidence in our downstream environment and what kind of environment were we going into. So this was only 2 minutes after we went into full service backup that Keith had shared a quick note here talking about how generally that there was really going to be little influence on this particular supercell over the next hour or two before we really see any upscale growth. So with that in mind, as the radar operator, you know, you're thinking about what is the downstream environment, what kind of tornado damage threat tags may be going forward, and what is the warning durations. This is a long track with potentially little to no interruptions expected within the storm. So here's a few more captures I wanted to share during our service backup time of how the facilitator continued to share great information. So here's another satellite looking at infrared, and how Keith discusses how there's updrafts behind the main supercell that are continuing to kind of perk up and perhaps indicative of further large-scale forcing overcoming the earlier subsidence that was mentioned. So this would actually play a factor in subsequent line of thunderstorms that would move through the area with severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings on that line as well. And as I mentioned, it's not just about sharing just satellite soundings. We also share a mixture of other great tools. This is just an example here of how he shared Keith was able to share with us the STP values on the SBC Mesoanalysis page and give us an idea of where we're seeing those peak and higher values out ahead of this line of thunderstorms. So I like to think of this particular event as a mutual aid to the rescue concept. In summary, we were in service backup for Paducah for a total of 5 hours. And it's a great work by two offices. Many of their partners had mentioned at NWA, I know, that they never noticed that there was a break in the warning operations. It was a very seamless and smooth transition from Paducah issuing warnings all the way up through Mayfield, and then us taking over here at NWS Springfield from there east on this main supercell. And there was other storms that produced tornadoes in that area through this event as well. In total, 13 tornado warnings were issued during this event, 3 base, 6 considerable, and 4 tornado emergencies. Also 6 severe thunderstorm warnings and 1 flash flood. And I just can't continue to praise the work of the RMA program going forward and the work that they've done in the past already. The ability to just quickly come up to speed and leverage all these different tools, which include satellite. There's just so much information being shared that it really allows you to, be confident in your decisions you're making on your downstream warnings and damage threat tags downstream. So moving forward with the mutual aid and RMA program, we're continuing to work with Southern Region on the use of a collaborative mesoanalysis tool, but we're looking to leverage the use of new tools as well. There's so much new information that continues to be developed and shared across the National Weather Service, and we're always interested in learning about some of that new information. So if you have information to share with us, we'd love to hear about that. And we continue to onboard new facilitators. There's training that we go through as far as how to facilitate these programs in these chat rooms. And then there's also the potential of expansion of this program. Right now, the grassroots of this program is generally in Central Region, but the expansion of this program, beyond just our region boundaries, those boundaries don't actually exist when you look on a map. There's no difference with us forecasting between Central and Southern Region and Western Region, et cetera. And then we may eventually expand to other service areas as well. For example, winter, fire weather, and providing that mutual aid concept going forward. So that concludes my presentation for today. And I would like to thank again my co-authors that helped me put together this presentation and everybody that was able to attend the presentation today.
Thanks, Kyle. That was excellent. I think back to when I think you and I kind of got into a side conversation. I believe it was at the satellite workshop at OPG. We had a lengthy conversation about the kind of the benefit of mesoanalysis, and here we are 3 years later, looking back at a historic event like this. Pretty impressive. So with that, let me go ahead and encourage everybody to stay on, and we'll have a discussion here. So feel free to add, anybody from a field office or regional headquarters, feel free to add a question or comment into chat, and we can get to that in the order that they come in. And please use your full name as you do so that we can follow up. And then I'll also mention too that, let's see, it looks like Lee will put in a link to a survey, so feel free to fill that out and add some feedback for the Satellite Book Club. And then in a week from today, on Thursday, December 15th at 12 p.m. Eastern time, we'll be back to the normal time then, and Carl Jones from WFO Grand Forks and Dylan Flynn from the National Hurricane Center will discuss the product generation PGen tool. So that'll be a good one next week. And again, that's December 15th at noon Eastern time. Feel free to contact the Tower S team, contact Lee Byerly or Kashad Bowman for questions about the Satellite Book Club or configuration of satellite products. So we'll get into the discussion now. We'll kind of go through some of the comments and questions that are in chat here. Feel free to, again, add your comments or questions, and we'll discuss that here over the next few minutes. But let's see, one of the first ones are, okay, Scott Lindstrom had put a comment in there, basically a link to the remote mesoanalysis input. So there's a link in there for that. And let's see, Mac down in New Braunfels had a really good question there. He was asking about the RMA program and where it may go in the future. So we know this is a central region for now. Kyle, I know you covered that after Mac put that in there, but basically, I think the idea is a proof of concept in Central Region that would then kind of potentially go nationally at that point. So you may want to add to that, Kyle, but the bottom line is he was asking about if this is something that Central Region can participate in, and he asked if it was similar to the Savvy concept, which we know has been in place for a while, and it really is. It's very similar to Savvy, but it's focused on mesoanalysis.
No, absolutely, you hit that right on the head. Program that can be leveraged across region boundaries as well. So.
Yeah, so that's excellent that we have that. I can't speak highly enough of the RMA program. It's really excellent to be able to leverage expertise from across the agency and funnel that to the office that's in need at the time. So really cool concept there. So yeah, hopefully this will expand to other regions, even beyond Central Region in the coming months and years. So Becca had mentioned that that it's incredible, and obviously that the mutual aid concept they're exploring up in Alaska region too. So that's really good to hear. Obviously not as much severe as she mentions up there, but still. And yeah, she mentioned fire weather, winter weather, but that's something that too, I think Central Region has talked about that. Kyle, you may have more input on that, but this doesn't have to be limited to severe weather. We know mesoscale is an issue for winter weather and fire weather and so on too. So hopefully in the future we expand to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and let's see, a couple other comments in here. Brian Curran down in Midland. It's kind of talking about the need for training and what topics on training are required to become an RMA facilitator. So the mesoanalysis modules that come out a while back, that course is a requirement, and then to kind of shadow for a little bit for some of the facilitators to really get the hang of it. But beyond that, Kyle, am I missing anything on that? I think that's kind of the baseline training for being able to be a facilitator.
Correct.
Okay, so yeah, that's something, again, Kyle had mentioned that they're looking to expand and have more facilitators too. So yeah, any additional questions that people have, please feel free to put that in there and we can continue to discuss this. But I've got a couple questions here that I can kind of mention in the meantime as others enter their comments and questions into chat. The additional satellite expertise, is there any additional satellite expertise really that the RMA program can leverage beyond just kind of what we have now, Kyle?
No, absolutely. That's a great question. And I don't think that there's any boundaries to the different expertise that we can leverage. Just going through different workshops and test beds over the past couple of years here with regards to satellite, there's so much knowledge to be shared from those test beds and such going forward. And I think that'd be a great idea to leverage that expertise. All these different satellite teams that are consist of different experts. They can probably pick those satellite images apart better than we could any day of the week, and we'd love to just hear what they have to say and learn from them, and have them share that knowledge that they
have. Okay. Yeah, and Scott was kind of wanting a little bit more information there on kind of how this works from the standpoint of staffing, and he asked about the facilitators if we're on shift at the time, and he was kind of asking if it's just quiet weather days in other offices where the facilitators happen to be. And yeah, that's exactly how that works typically. Is we may be on shift in an area that has no impact at all, and then yet there's an opportunity to help out an office that does have impact. Let's see here. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is when we're on shift. And Kyle, I think occasionally it can be authorized as kind of, some comp time, and so somebody can kind of staff up to do that on occasion, but you may want to comment more on that.
Yeah, no, that definitely is the case. There is potential for us to be approved for that comp time for that. In the cases where we really need that facilitator to help out. And that's why we continue to expand the program as well. We have over 50 volunteers and facilitators, and that's the main reason behind that, being not only encompassing more expertise across the area, but also having more facilitators available for events. It's a great concept.
Excellent. Yeah. Now, Dan Lindsay mentioned something I think is really important there too. He mentioned, that to build this satellite expertise, it really is you know, it's really important for us to learn from our peers. So, you know, and that's something I know, Kyle, you probably do it in your office there in Springfield, but we're looking at events across the country when we're quiet and trying to learn from that. But when we have the experts, the subject matter experts in mesoanalysis that are in this chat, and we can watch that, then you can learn from them, you know, if you're just kind of following along what's going on in the RMA chat too. I know that's been very helpful for me.
Yeah, no, that's a great point that you make. You know, we encourage anybody that's interested to get into these chat rooms and just follow along if you'd like. And these threads are available. They are archive chats and archive threads, so to say. So you can go back and say you were off the last couple days and you knew there was a big event that happened. You can go back through an entire event and look at the entire thread. Just look through the different information that was shared and learn from it. It's a great learning experience.
Yeah, that's great. And talking a little bit more about the structure now, Jason Schauman there at your office, the SUE there in Springfield, had mentioned that the use of radar warning teams was very valuable in conveying RMA information to the warning forecasters. And that's something that I've put some thought into, and maybe you can expand on this, Kyle, a little bit too, is that when you've got somebody by your side that's looking at some of the radar data and the mesoanalysis data, and they're able to feed information to you, that team dynamic between these paired warning teams sometimes and can be really helpful. So I don't know, every office may do that a little bit different, but yeah, it's kind of important, I think, to really give that some thought about how to structure.
No, absolutely. Yeah, we practice that here at our office here, having that radar team concept. I mean, it's something we were even able to leverage during the COVID times. We were able to actually have, at times, even when I was on radar before, where I was able to have a mesoanalysis and Jason Schauman by my side via virtual contact on Google Meet. So just able to leverage that radar assistant, radar mesoanalysis, all those different tools at your hand as a radar operator. I mean, yeah, it's invaluable information that's coming in.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, we've been trying to do the same at the Norman office, and then here at Indianapolis too. We've talked about that concept and how we'd actually make that happen. But it's important. I mean, you get 2 eyes on radar and you get 4 eyes on radar and mesoanalysis, and you know that's an excellent way for that to happen too. But it's easier for that second person to pull information from the RMA chat and just directly relay that to the warning forecaster. So that's excellent. So I've got one more question here. See if anybody else kind of chimes in with any last minute questions, but I was going to ask this and just get your opinion on this, Kyle. I can say this: if Northern Indiana called me in Indianapolis and said, hey, we got this big tornado event going on here, we need you to spin up on backup really quick. Obviously, there's a level of stress with that. So can you maybe speak just a little bit more about how that played out in Springfield? Because it's amazing how quickly, from the end user, it was really seamless how that, it seemed like just kind of watching it play out, how quick you're able to do that. So kudos to you guys for doing that. That's pretty amazing. That's not easy.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what it really goes back to, and, you know, I had this discussion with my MIC here at our office, this exact same conversation. You know, it really goes back to the training that you put in, the hours of training you put in beforehand. You know, I can't thank Jason Schauman, our science and operation officer here at Springfield, enough for that. To be prepared for these kind of situations. You know, you're never fully going to be prepared for a situation like this, going into full service backup with ongoing tornado emergencies in effect. You know, it's almost like something you get right out of your radar and applications course in a way. I'd say that's about the only time where you truly have these training events, so to say. But it's just the training that goes into it. You go into what you know best. You know, when you're there, you know, reflect on it later. But in the heat of the moment, it's all about making those warning decisions as needed.
Yeah, well said. That's excellent perspective and something we all should kind of keep in mind. But you know, you guys did great work, obviously, in taking over when Paducah had the issue there with having to go into backup. So I think that's everything. Unless anybody has any last minute comments or questions, we can probably turn this over to Jordan to wrap things up for final remarks. Looks like I don't see any other comments or questions at this point. So, Jordan?
All right, well, thank you so much, Kyle and Randy, for presenting and facilitating respectively. It was great. I mean, every time I interact with folks from the Weather Service, the passion for weather and the commitment to service is revealed. And I think really what this presentation underscores more than anything is elements of both of that. Just as a reminder, we've got one more satellite book club, as you heard from Randy, next Thursday back at our regular time, 12 noon Eastern time. I will have Carl Jones from the Weather Forecast Office in Grand Forks and Dylan Flynn from the National Hurricane Center are going to discuss the PGED tool. Randy will also, feel free to contact the Tower S team, particularly Lee Byerly and Kashawn Bowman, for questions about the Satellite Book Club or about the configuration of satellite products. With that, we'll wrap it up for today. Appreciate everybody for attending. Thanks again for our presenter and our facilitator, and we'll see you next week, hopefully. If not, happy holidays and take care.